You ever have one of those days where you think it's going to be chill, and then out of nowhere, someone decides your space belongs to them? Yeah, that happened to me. And it all started with the smell of charcoal and a woman I'd never seen before walking straight into my backyard like she owned the place. I was just enjoying a quiet weekend, cleaning up around the patio, when I noticed her by the gate, blonde bob sunglasses, floral shirt, marching in like she was checking in at a hotel. She didn't say hello, no, sorry to bother you, pointed at my grill and said, "This'll do nicely for our barbecue today." At first, I thought it was a misunderstanding. Maybe she had the wrong house, but no. She told me to leave my own backyard because she and her family were planning to grill, and apparently my property looked more comfortable than hers. The kicker? She tried to act like I was the one being unreasonable when I told her no, and that's when things started to get weird. She glanced back toward the street where her family was waiting, and said something about how people like me didn't know how to use a grill properly anyway. That's when I realized this wasn't just a case of entitled behavior, it was something uglier. She had no shame, no hesitation. Just full-on disrespect wrapped up in this fake, polite tone. And every time I pushed back, she doubled down. Like I was the trespasser, I was still trying to stay calm, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. She hadn't even unpacked her cooler yet, and, judging by the look in her eyes, she was planning to. What she did next, you won't believe. How far she took it. After that tense moment at the gate, I couldn't just let it go. My backyard isn't just some random space, it's my little sanctuary. I've spent months fixing up the deck, planting flowers, and yes, saving up for that grill. It's where I unwind after work, hang out with friends, and sometimes just enjoy some quiet time. So for this woman to walk in and act like she had the right to boss me around, that hit a nerve. I tried to figure out what was going on. I asked neighbors quietly if they knew her. Turns out, she just moved into the neighborhood recently. I thought maybe she was new and confused about property lines, but her attitude told a different story. It felt less like an honest mistake and more like she believed she was entitled to use whatever she wanted, even if it wasn't hers. What really added fuel to the fire was the way she kept dropping comments about people like me. It wasn't subtle. It was clear she didn't think I belonged there, as if my presence was a problem. Now, that phrase stuck with me because it wasn't just about the grill or the backyard, it was about something deeper, something unfair. I started wondering if this was about race, class, or just her own arrogance. Meanwhile, her family waited silently at the curb, watching the whole thing unfold. I could see her whispering to them, probably spinning her version of the story. It felt like a showdown waiting to happen, and honestly, I wasn't sure what she was going to do next. Would she call the cops, try to intimidate me further, or just take over my space and leave me out? The whole situation was surreal, my own backyard turning into a battleground over a grill. I stood there, heart pounding, knowing this was far from over. And the worst part, had no idea how this was going to end. As the woman's family lingered outside, I noticed the quiet tension wasn't just between her and Mitt. It was like the whole street was holding its breath. Some neighbors peeked through curtains, others glanced from their porches, but no one stepped in. It was as if this backyard standoff had become the latest drama nobody wanted to get involved in. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted anyone else to jump in either. This was my space, my fight. She kept insisting the grill was hers now, casually moving closer, like she was ready to claim it by force if needed. Each time I told her no, her tone shifted a little colder, sharper. It wasn't just about the grill anymore. It felt like she wanted to make me feel small, out of place. I tried to keep my voice steady, but inside, I was boiling. How could someone just walk into your home and act like they had a right to kick you out? I started thinking back to moments in this neighborhood, some of the subtle looks, the way a few people avoided eye contact, or how sometimes my friends hesitated before coming over. This wasn't just about one barbecue or one grill. It was a glimpse into a bigger problem: how people can feel unwelcome or even unsafe in places they call home. Her words weren't just rude. They were a reminder of a division that's hard to ignore. Meanwhile, her family finally stepped in, not with words, but with uneasy glances. It was like they weren't sure what to do either, caught between supporting her and sensing the awkwardness. That added a layer I hadn't expected. Was she acting on her own? Or was this a family thing? And how did they really feel about pushing someone out of their own backyard? I stood my ground, heart racing, wondering if this confrontation was about to explode or if it would just drag on, leaving everyone stuck in this uncomfortable silence. What would happen next? Would this woman find a way to force me out, or would the neighborhood finally speak up? The answers were still out there, just beyond the fence, waiting to come to light. The tension in the air was thick, heavier than the summer heat pressing down on us. She didn't back off. Instead, she stepped even closer to the grill, a smug smile tugging at the corner of her lips, like she was already picturing her family gathered around it, flipping burgers as if I didn't even exist. I could feel my hands clench into fists, but I forced myself to stay calm. Getting angry wouldn't help. Not yet. Her family started to spread out, inching toward my property line, their eyes flicking between me and her like this was some kind of strange game. I caught one of them whispering something, then nodding in agreement. I had no idea what was being said, but the way they moved told me they were ready to back her up, no matter what. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a grill, it was about power, control, and who could claim space. I glanced around, hoping for some kind of support from the neighbors, but all I saw were closed doors and curtains drawn tight. It felt like I was alone against them all. The woman's voice cut through the silence again, sharp and clear, accusing me of making things difficult and not understanding how neighbors work. I wanted to shout back, to call her out for what this really was, but I held back. I had to think carefully about my next move. Then, without warning, she reached for the grill handle. It was a small gesture, but it was like a spark in a dry forest. I stepped forward, my voice steady but firm, telling her again to stop. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment the smugness disappeared, replaced by a flash of something darker: anger, maybe even fear. The moment hung there, stretched thin, like the calm before a storm. What she did next could change everything. Turn this backyard clash into something far bigger. I was ready to stand my ground, but inside, I knew the hardest part was still to come. Just when I thought things couldn't get more tense, I heard the gate creak open behind me. I turned, expecting maybe a curious neighbor or someone finally coming to see what the commotion was about, but instead, it was a man in a button-up shirt and a smug expression that matched hers perfectly. "There you are," he said to her, completely ignoring me. "Is this the place?" She nodded without missing a beat and pointed directly at me, like I was the problem. Then came the twist. I wasn't ready for. He pulled out a printed piece of paper from a folder and said, "With the HOA, you're in violation of community grilling guidelines." I blinked, confused, because I'd never seen either of them at any HOA meeting, and I knew those rules front to back. I'd made sure of it when I got the grill. Still, he waved the paper in my face like it was some kind of eviction notice, trying to make it seem official. I asked to see the details, and he refused. "You can take it up at the next meeting," he said, already walking toward the grill like this was a done deal. My heart pounded. It wasn't just one entitled person anymore. This was starting to look like a coordinated effort. I began to wonder if they'd been planning this trying to find a way to push me out of my own space using whatever excuse they could come up with. Her family, now emboldened, started pulling coolers from their car and unloading folding chairs, like my yard was already theirs. I felt like I was watching a slow invasion. Every step they took felt like a challenge, testing how far they could go before I snapped. And still, the neighborhood stayed silent. No one intervened. No one questioned them. At that moment, it hit me. They weren't just trying to grill, they were trying to erase me from my own backyard, using made-up rules and fake authority. And I still had no idea how far they were willing to take this. I stood there, frozen for a second, watching them take over my backyard like they had some official right to do it. The woman started opening a bag of charcoal, and the man from the so-called HOA began adjusting the grill knobs like it was already his. My blood was boiling, but I stayed calm. I knew something wasn't right. So I did the only thing I could think of. We pulled out my phone and started recording. The second the camera was up, their behavior changed. The woman's cheerful fake smile snapped off, replaced by this look of cold annoyance. "You can't film us without consent," she snapped. But I told her straight he was on my own property, and I had every right to document what was happening. The man tried to cover his face and rushed to put that paper away, but not before I zoomed in and caught the letterhead. It didn't even have the real HOA logo, was just something printed off a website. Then came the moment I was waiting for. As I kept filming, I called the actual HOA president, someone I'd spoken with just last week about neighborhood cleanup. On speaker, right there, she confirmed that there were no rules against grilling, no scheduled inspections, and she had no idea who these people were. The man's face went pale. The woman started gathering her things, muttering something under her breath about misunderstandings. But it was too late. As they rushed to pack up, one of the neighbors who'd been quietly watching stepped out. Turns out, he was a retired police officer and he'd recognized the man from a previous scam he'd pulled in another neighborhood a year ago. That was the twist. This wasn't just a Karen with a bad attitude. This was a planned act, a scam to intimidate people out of their property. They left in a hurry, the fake papers stuffed back in a folder, and the family silent now. The grill sat untouched behind me. My space, my peace, reclaimed. But the neighborhood, it had just learned something big, and so had I.